All right, here it is. Pitching. How do you get your idea out of your head and into the hands of an editor who cares enough to eventually usher it through that really long process to eventually get it into a magazine? Pitching is sort of almost sacred to a writer, and it's perhaps the most powerful you will ever be in this process. And it's really weird because everything else that writers do is about creativity. It's about creating that story, that perfect narrative that's going to get you attention or move the needle in your career in one way or another. But this pitching moment is before the negotiation. It happens when you're generating excitement around your idea and taking it out to the market. And the first thing I want to say is your idea needs to sell itself. Now, do you remember in an earlier video, I talked about how magazines made money, and I showed you that prospectus that Wired has about how much they're going to charge for their advertising rates and that sort of thing. That is their pitch to Ford Motor Company or Apple Computers or whoever else to eventually give them money. It generated excitement in the potential advertiser to actually end up giving them money. And the pitch that you're going to make to an editor is that same thing. It has to be, in a way, almost cinematic. It has to be to captivate their interest, and to a degree, it has to captivate their interest in a way that they know that readers are going to want this. They want your idea to talk essentially to that media kit so that eventually Ford Motor Company gives them $150,000. And you're part of that pipeline, and they're going to try to transition that excitement that you put into this idea into that bigger market. And because the business model of magazines is so torturous and takes so long, I want you to take out ideas that you think have potential as more than just appearing in a magazine, a one off, something that just someone reads and then they forget the next day, but something which maybe has enough legs in it to either score a movie deal, to score a book deal, to grow to something a little bit bigger. Maybe it's a column that you're trying to eventually get, a monthly column, and this is the opening salvo for that column. Let's say it's this deep investigative piece that you're going to get 5,000 words in the magazine for, but you think you could write 80,000 words on it if you were really passionate about. Maybe it's this one tale of a robot inventor who invented a murderous robot who then had a hilarious hijinks in the Bay Area. Okay, great, good, arc, narrative, everything. The more cinematic, the bigger it is, the more it makes someone feel something inside, the better. Or the bigger, newer, great idea, something that wows them, gives them a little dopamine hit. Your pitch needs to be like that. And I'm going to have some sample pitches that I've had successfully placed in magazines over the years. And there's various ways to pitch magazines, right? There's the short pitch that's like 100 words. Hey, Trump said something stupid. I'd like to write something about why Trump said something stupid. Or or there's a longer, more in-depth one. I feel like the pitch needs to be a work of art in itself. And when I started pitching, I wrote a lot of really terrible pitches that I thought were interesting, but was no way going to sell it. And you need to realize that the pitch has a couple things. The intro to it is in one sentence, like a lead sentence in an article. It's this one sentence that sort of contains everything. Usually it's an image. It's if we're talking about that robot guy, it's a robot holding a knife over the person and stabbing them, and it's a thing that makes them go, wow, oh, this is sort of interesting. Maybe puts them a little unstable. And then there's going to be a section that says why this story is a great idea. Another section, what research you've already put into it, and then why this magazine is the one that's supposed to take this up, and then why you are the perfect writer to write this piece. And if it answers all of those questions, it has a really good chance to overcome the hurdles to get it in the magazine. And depending on the magazine, there's different ways that they process pitches. It's very common just have an editor responsible for a section in the magazine, and they can just green light it immediately. Another way this happens is it goes up to a higher editor. So you submitted to, say, a senior editor in the magazine, and it has to go to an executive editor who puts that little check mark on it. Or at some of these other magazines, all of the editors will collect 50 or 60 pitches from freelancers, and they'll take it to a big meeting, and then they'll just hash through it, and that editor will actually pitch your idea to a community of editors, and that's what eventually gets you the green light into the magazine. Now, the bigger the idea, the more competitive, the more salesmanship you put into this, the better chance it has of getting there, especially if this is a cold pitch. Now, if you've worked with an editor for years, it's obviously you can be a little less formal because they know who you are, but still, the more effort you put into it also helps you outline the story when you actually get around to writing it. So take these things seriously, and then send them out. And also realize that you're going to get a ton of rejections. There's just no way around it. Failure is just part of this business. And depending on the magazine, if you're an editor sitting at a desk, and there's millions of freelancers out there, right, or thousands anyway, and a lot of these guys will get, or girls will get, like 10 pitches a day, and your pitch has to like sort of rise to the top of that pile to get anywhere. Which is also the reason why you have value later in your negotiating, is because you've crossed a hurdle, you've proven yourself. But it still means it takes a lot of time. If you've been pitching someone, and I don't give out contacts, but what I do suggest is that you look at a magazine, and I'm going to just pick one up right here. This is the Men's Health that last time I put up, and if you go to the beginning of this magazine. Watch this not have it. There's a section called a masthead. Yeah, there it is. See, there's the masthead right here. And that's the list of the editors who work at the magazine. And then what you do is you go to editorial, and then you count down from the top. I generally suggest a features editor, senior editor, something along that, or not the top person in the magazine because they don't have time for you. Someone who does have time for you, and just pitch them. Often 7 down from the top. There's a rule of thumb for who to pitch, and that's the person you target. And it's you just need to find their email address. Never, ever, and this is a huge mistake. Never, ever go to like submissions@wired.com or submissions@npr.com. That is called the slush pile, and that is where the amateurs go. And no one ever reads that, and you never get a response. Go to the editor directly, send them an email, and they still probably won't respond to you because editors are, the clinical word is flakes. You'll send these out, and there's this idea among editors that they are very special people who grant people very special access into their very special pitch meeting, and they want absolute exclusivity on their pitches, and if you don't, you've sort of violated some, trust. That's bullshit. Don't do it. If you have a relationship with an editor where they respond to you immediately and get, or in a reasonable amount of time, then maybe it's okay to give them some exclusivity, but they really need to earn that from you, because in general, you're one of those 10 emails that they get, and they don't even read everything. If they had a bad argument with their wife or husband the night before, whatever, you never know what's going on with them. You may not get a response. So if you wait for a response, you're screwed. And especially when we look at the timelines. If you have an idea that is really, really great, and you have to wait 3 weeks for them to get back to you and tell you no, and then you send it out to another person, you have to wait another 3 weeks, now you have 6 weeks have passed. Where is your money? Okay, it's not there. So what editors want is what I call silo pitching. It's like pitching a silo, one silo at a time, and then no one gets upset. That just doesn't work unless you're like really big and have a great relationship. So instead, what you need to do is market pitch, which means you're creating a market out of the available avenues out there. And I suggest making a list, going from the top of the list. For me, it's always the New Yorker. I don't know why. I talk about them a lot here. Sorry, New Yorker guys. You pitch them first. The top editor at the New Yorker is David Remnick. He will not read your pitch. I actually pitched him early in my career. I sent a bunch of pitches out, and And I was so psyched when David Remnick wrote me a response to my idea, which was 2 letters, no. N-O. That was the only thing he wrote to my pitch. I was like, oh, well, cool. He read it, right? New Yorker, and then for me, this is my general list. It's like New Yorker, Atlantic, Mother Jones, Harper's, Wired, Men's Journal, blah, blah, blah. You know, you make a list all the way down until you get to the very bottom of the list, which is like Cat Fancy, okay? Or, I don't know, like Knitting Monthly. That's at the bottom of your list. And you make a list of editorial contacts at these places. Maybe you've spoken with somebody. You know, everyone's list is going to be different. But my suggestion is that you write a pitch, a bang up pitch. And Google Docs is a great way to store pitches that can be templated and reformatted very easily. But anyway, make this thing say, Dear David Remnick, who will not respond to you, and actually don't write him an email, but Dear David Remnick, here's my idea. And then you write the pitch. And then, you know, I really hope that, you know, you give me a minute to think about this. Send that to him. And immediately just pitch the next magazine because he's going to say no. And you just work your way down the list. Now, admittedly, some editors will find out that you're multi-pitching, and some of them, depending on their emotional status, may get upset at this. Really don't worry about it. They probably weren't going to get back to you anyway. And the very worst thing that can happen is that 2 magazines or 5 magazines will all say yes to your awesome idea. But why is that a problem? Like if you suddenly created an idea that everyone wanted, well, isn't that the way capitalism works? Isn't that the way markets work? Haven't you just suddenly secured a way to create leverage in your contract negotiation? Yes, you have. When you have a way to pivot from one to another, you have options. And you could theoretically run an auction. All right, New Yorker, you got 1,000 over there. Oh, Wired, 2,000. And you could do that. It probably won't work. But what you can do is talk to all of them and say, oh, Atlantic wants a 1,500 word piece. New Yorker wants a 5,000 word piece. Wired wants an 8,000 word piece. And then you can start to gauge what the value of your work is. And you can say, look, I really want more. And if they don't give ground, you have another option to move to. So you really, really have to be pitching to 8 or 9 outlets at once. And I know that it's hard because you feel like that relationship with your editor is so special, right? That this person is the person literally like giving you money, like they're the source of it. But I'm having been in this business for almost 20 years, I have to say that editors, they don't stick around, right? You have an editor who's there for 1 or 2 years, 3 years maybe, and most of the time there's huge turnover, especially at the middling levels of that masthead. This is why you don't pitch Dave Remnick, because he's been there for 22 years or something, so almost 20 years. And so he's stuck around, but the senior editors, the associate editors, they generally move on because to get promoted in magazines, you generally have to switch to another magazine, and in this world, this is really what happens. There's budget cuts for some reason, and the masthead shrinks, and they end up in PR or freelancing like you. And then they realize that the same thing that you were up against is that editors take forever to pitch, and they realize that you have to create a market for your work. And realize that stories are often loss leaders. You're not going to make a ton of money on the upfront. It's really about what happens down the road. And also realize that you are going to fail so much. Go out there and collect those rejections, because those rejections are the only way you learn. And sometimes they'll give you little feedback for why your idea didn't hit, right? Sometimes you'll go out there, and the faster you can do this, the faster you can accumulate information, the more ability you have to grow your practice and get better. And honestly, when I first started out as a writer, I spent a year pitching articles that went nowhere. I was terrible at pitching, and it has only gotten better. Now I can write a pitch and almost guarantee I'll have it landed, just because I know how to do it. And I also know that I can pitch 20 guys at once, and I've never had a really bad outcome from that. It's just about creating a market, being responsible with your business. Now for the pitch structure itself, I've already went over the outline. I'm going to probably paste in the notes here a link to a Google document or a PDF that has 5 or 6 pitches that I've written. Also, if you have read the Quick and Dirty Guide to Freelance Writing, which is one of the ebooks that I put out, it's on Amazon, whatever. There are a bunch of pitches in the back of that, along with my story and just sort of information around. Read those, use those as templates, but also be creative. Realize that this is a selling document. This is what is selling you to them. It is what is creating your value. And go out there and do it, because I believe in you. I know you can.